Okay, let's talk about the special episode of The Bear that dropped on May 5th, titled Gary. This episode is written by John Bernthal and Emma Moss Bachrach and directed by Christopher Storer. In this prequel episode, it takes place before season one. Richie and Mikey are asked by Jimmy to take a sealed box to Gary, Indiana in exchange for a payment. The two go on a one-day road trip together, and more of their complicated relationship is revealed. The two also seemingly have a falling out at the end of this episode. It does also provide context for the man Mikey was before his suicide and for Richie's character and where he is mentally when we meet him in season one. You may be aware, John Bernthal and Emma Moss Bachrach are on Broadway together right now doing Dog Day Afternoon. They are currently doing
Yeah.
this as we speak. Do you think one day they just said, "Hey, let's write an episode of The Bear, see if they'll make it for us"?
I guess I don't know. Be curious, maybe about a little bit more backstory there. I would definitely be curious to see them do Dog Day Afternoon. Do you know who they're playing? Do you happen to know? I haven't looked into that. I'm
I
familiar
have
with the
not.
film.
I have not
Hmm.
looked. No, I'm not familiar.
Yeah. If we don't know, that's a side note anyway. I can look it up later. I'm just curious, like who's who? Like who's playing the Al Pacino character? That's got to be Bernthal, right? I don't, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Because I think either could do it. So, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the episode. I wasn't sure in the first half of it whether I was enjoying the episode. It was maybe a bit slow.
Mm.
Um, I guess it's sort of to the point, though. Thinking about it as a whole, I think it works. It really does work along the lines of a short film, if an hour long film is short.
Yeah.
Um, Thinking about it as an episode of The Bear is almost tougher because it's limited in scope. I don't know. How did the episode land for you, right?
Yeah, I thought the same thing about the first half. I thought, oh man, this is just going to be an hour of them just busting each other's balls in the car for, on the way to this trip and back. And for the most part, whether in the car or on the basketball court or other, at the restaurant while they're waiting, it seemingly was. And then it sort of turns into this interesting exploration and really sort of dueling scenes of Mikey and Richie and who they are and who they have been, that turn into something much more interesting, I'd say, in the last 40% of the episode.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like maybe you almost did need the build up to that, which in fairness, as I was watching it, even I felt like, okay, well, something's going to happen at some point. But it did go on for quite a while where they were just kind of putzing around Gary, Indiana. And
Yeah.
I haven't read anything on this yet, but I had the distinct feeling that when they went to the Coney hot dog shop, I
Yeah.
had the distinct feeling that the woman there really works there. But I haven't looked into it. But do you know what I mean? Did it kind of feel like that? She didn't feel like an
Yeah,
act.
there was some authenticity there. I did see that what her name was. I think her name in the episode is Alicia, and her name is Alicia in real life. So yeah, maybe there's some real sense of, oh, we're gonna try to find the Gary, Indiana equivalent of the beef or something like it, and we're just gonna go plop down there for 20 minutes and do a scene.
Yeah, not a lot of time to do research when they surprise drop an episode on us. But
Yeah.
um, even as all that was going on, it's not that I didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed it in a certain way, but it was going on and on and on. And then you playing pickup basketball, and um, I guess maybe to the episode's credit, I wasn't finding myself able to guess where it was going. Right? I
Yeah.
mean, at some level, thinking, well, something's got to happen at some point. But even once we got into the bar and things kind of picked up a little bit and it was maybe more entertaining, more dynamic in terms of interaction. We're meeting new characters. We've got this character, Sherry. I believe her name is Sherry, unless she was lying about that
Yes.
part.
Yeah.
But
Fact or fiction.
they play that fact or fiction game and so on. And then this bond starts to form between Mikey and Sherry, and that's really interesting. Well, at the same time, you have the dynamic with Richie and basically everyone in there, which I think, yeah, it does. Yeah, I don't know. Do you feel like it deepens Richie's character? Because that's what I was about to say. But in some ways, I felt like we already knew he was that this guy was in there. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to go back and, the other thing about this, it doesn't give you much time to revisit, things that you've seen before. I don't recall how much I mean, obviously there's a lot of Richie and Mikey interaction in any of the flashback episodes that we've had in The Bear, but did their relationship look like this? Or was it just typically when you see Mikey, he's kind of the over the top flamboyant arguing with somebody, but I don't remember how much of that was with Richie. This seems to be that they clearly have a long-term relationship with one another, but also it's sort of built on um, this sense of Mikey is the alpha and Richie just sort of is subservient to him and just sort of takes it while Mikey dishes it out. And
Yeah.
it just leads more into the personality of who Richie is, trying to find his place as we get to him, and especially in seasons 2 and 3.
Yeah, I do find myself wondering how much the relationship maybe soured after this.
Yeah, yeah,
And I don't know that I can piece absolutely everything we've seen together, but clearly what happens in Fishes occurred before this in
yes,
historical terms, right? Because in Fishes, Tiff is pregnant, but she's not this pregnant. And then in the season 3 episode Legacy, I believe one thing that's mentioned there is that Tiff did go into labor the next day.
yes, and there is that is referenced in the episode Legacy, and there's a line there about. I actually have it here. The day before, I was with your brother on this trip, and I know she was like a little bit pissed at me, so I made sure I was around all day. So referencing this fact that he was gone, she goes in labor the next day. He was there, thank God, because certainly she was pissed off that he didn't get home that night until late.
Yeah, so like, was that line the inspiration for this entire episode somehow? When
Maybe.
they started thinking,
Yeah.
like, what do you think that trip was? Why do you think Tiffany would be pissed off at him? I mean, I haven't watched the episode. It's easy enough to see why she'd be pissed at him. He was supposed to be home by 5:15. He promised, and well, that's something I think you could effectively apologize for or excuse based on, oh, well, we were doing this errand. It was delayed.
Yeah.
We had to wait, bus around Gary. There was nothing we could do about it. And then there was this train or whatever. Okay. But you're also coming home drunk, coming down off cocaine with like clown paint on your face. I
Right,
mean,
right,
it's
right,
like I'm just imagining her reaction when he gets home at 6 p.m. or whatever. Wouldn't be very positive. And I don't know. We know that they're divorced by the time we get to the main series, so how much did that at the
right.
beginning of Gary, they seem like they're doing good. And so how much does that feed into their long term troubles, I guess is another
You
question.
do have to wonder, did something like this start or build up to, yeah, the fact that they aren't together anymore? Maybe it's a sense of you don't, I can imagine her say, you don't need to be around that Mikey guy anymore, any more than you have to. You work with him, and then that's it. He's, Mikey's part of my life, and you could sort of see where the conversation would go after
Mm-hmm.
a day like this, especially when she's in the midst of about to give birth to a child. They're trying to know how to figure this together. He's now heard what he's heard from Mikey at the end of this episode, so yeah, there's some real. Yeah, Richie is such an interesting character. We've talked about this before, just because of the way he is pulled and the things that he has been, the places he has had to go for certain people. So I did think that this added some more to him, at least in terms of who he is when we first meet him. Now knowing these
Yeah,
things,
yeah. And right, and I mean to just throw it in there too, in terms of how Tiff would react when they're on the phone. She asks him not to smoke cigarettes. So you can kind of imagine that prior to this already,
yeah,
perhaps because she's pregnant, they're going to be parents and so on. There have been discussions and promises made about kind of like get your act together and no more wild crazy nights or whatever.
yeah,
We're quitting smoking together and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know if she ever smoked actually,
yeah,
but all that kind of stuff, such that with what's occurred here in Gary, he's kind of he's kind of broken a promise. I think that's probably
yeah,
part of it. And so I'm not at all suggesting that this wrecked their marriage right away, but it
right,
probably
right,
is an emergence of something symptomatic of what did make things not work out between them. Because
It
when we
is
see
it
them
is
years later, they still get along, you know?
it is interesting now that I think back on it because yeah, those two are together in a scene, less than a minute, but you really get the sense that things are fine and they're excited and they are very much, in love at that point. And so between then and obviously when season one, whatever the time frame is and that difference, yeah, it's just completely fallen apart. And this may have been a little bit of the first brick laid of that.
Yeah. Let's shift gears towards Mikey a bit, but in terms of the timeline, I think it is a few years before the beginning of season one. So
Yes.
I was looking at something. It might have even been the Wikipedia page. So if you want to find dates, people have plotted them out on the internet. You can find it. But I mentioned fishes. We know that this is after fishes, right? And I think we've
Yes.
been given the information before as far as um, fishes was in like 2018, I think. So now we're in
Yeah.
2019, and then the main series picks up in 2023 or something like that. Are you looking at it right now?
Yeah. So this says Fishes took place on December 24th, 2018, which sets the events of Gary probably sometime in the middle of or first half of 2019. In the pilot, the prayer card for Mikey says that he died by suicide in February of 2022. And the show, yeah, we see in the summer of 2023, assuming that's real time. So that's sort of the general timeline we're dealing with.
Yeah, or maybe the first season of the show is in 2022. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, something like that. So it's been a few years. Um, Thinking about what happens with Mikey in this episode, this is definitely something that I found very interesting and kind of made this worth existing, if that's a question at all. Like, why do this episode?
Yeah.
One, John Bernthal's great every time we see Mikey in the flashbacks, so it's just
Yeah.
nice to see more of him. But his character is also really interesting, and if you think about it, his character meaningfully haunts the whole series, right? I mean, this is why um, Carney has come back
Yep.
to take over the beef.
Yep.
The fact that Carney wasn't able to go to the funeral, couldn't bring himself to, and then of course the relationship between Mikey and Richie and so on. So the central thing I think that I want to talk about at least is in what we see between him and Sherry in
Hmm.
this episode, and then we're going to need to circle back but to Mikey and Richie. But
Yeah.
thoughts about his interactions with Sherry here?
Yeah, we don't often see Mikey being, I don't know, we ever see him being this vulnerable. Maybe with, oh gosh, no, I've completely forgotten her name during the Napkins episode, when they're, before, I can't believe I've forgotten her name. Before she
Yeah.
starts working. Before she starts working at the beef, she and Mikey bond over this sense of like, how hard it is out there. And, they have this real poignant conversation. But we don't often see in the conversations or in the flashbacks we get with, like, we don't often see him this vulnerable, but he is just, I mean, literally on the bathroom floor with her, opening up about his mom and his, childhood and who he was and who he wanted to be. It's just like, just this, I think, very rich history that we've not seen with Mikey before.
Yeah, and Tina is the character's name.
Tina.
It's funny because as you were saying, I was about to say Lisa, but that's at least close to the actor's name. But anyway, yeah, I mean there was some vulnerability there, but maybe not to this extent. I mean, when you get to where Mikey and Sherry are sitting in the bathroom and he's talking about how this feeling or conclusion that nothing really matters can
Hmm.
feel so freeing, but then every once in a while it hits him like a ton of bricks. And I mean, basically, he's describing his manic depression.
Yeah,
I mean,
basically.
that okay, well, nothing matters, just have fun, whatever. We can just do whatever we want to, and then it flipping around to nothing matters. There's no point in doing anything at all.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to mention and talk through a bit is in that the conversation, the story tells about Donna,
Hmm.
where, as he puts it, when his mother, managed to hit the right kind of balance of drugs and chemicals in her body or whatever, she's the right kind of move.
Yeah.
Coming into, but kind of putting that to the side even, that coming into his room and kind of caressing him and telling him how his day is going to go and how comforting he found that to be,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I can connect to, I think. But then I think the point more is in the story of one day he asks Donna to tell him how his day is going to go and what's going to happen. And she says, like, who cares? It's just a day or
Mm.
whatever, right? And so this is what Mikey says to Sherry. It's very quiet, by the way. Turn your subtitles on. Um, but that he struggles to understand how that could be the same person.
Yeah.
And what I think is a connection I want to draw ultimately is I think we see the same thing with Mikey in this episode. You
Hmm.
follow me
Okay. How
there? Does that
so?
land for you?
Oh, because in what he does to Richie at the end.
Yeah, the duality of Mikey.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, they sort of maybe in the first half of that episode they've established. We see more so than any extended period of time that we have in the rest of the series their type of relationship, and it's
yeah.
it's two guys, two rough guys, but they're just doing their guy things together. But then yeah, it becomes a just admit it, Richie. You fail at everything. You're going to fail at this too. Your kid's going to hate you. Um, it's sort of it's hard to think with Mikey that's sort of out of nowhere, but you're like, well, where is this coming from? Um, Coming from
It's, I mean,
the remembrance of this past or what? But just seems like out of nowhere.
it's even within the very same monologue. It's within the toast, right? Because like he starts
Yes.
out and he's toasting Richie and how happy he is, and he's going to be a father, and everything's going so well. From look how happy he is, and we verge into armchair psychoanalysis or something, but this is how it makes sense to me at some level of one, I think like Mikey's recognizing Richie really is happy, but the kind of shifting to you don't get to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're a piece of shit, like me. You're gonna mess it up. We all, it's not just you. You always mess it up. I always mess it up, right? And but he becomes so vicious in it, and I get the impression that that also, we were talking just a little bit ago about Richie's marriage with Tiff and what goes wrong there, or whatever,
Yeah.
and where Richie's character sat at the beginning of the series. Why would he be thinking? I get the feeling that this almost infected Richie's thinking as well, and his thinking about himself, and his ability to believe that he would be a good father, and so on and so forth. Because at some level, Mikey, it's not that he's right that Richie knows he's going to mess it up.
Hmm.
It's he does. There is something in Richie that is deeply worried that he's going to mess it up, and
And,
it's
and I
precisely there that Mike is hitting.
and I wonder also if until we see him in seasons 2 and 3 move more in the direction of finding a bit of a purpose, which he talks about in season 2, he's always been looking for, that he is not able to, or he is not able to, when Mikey's no longer around, show him that he can be a good father, or B, it's because they're divorced and he's not around and the daughter's not with him all the time. He's been proven right, and now he can't change it because Mikey's gone. So there's no way to to alter any of it. And so, yeah, what Mikey said came true. And so, well, he must have been right all along. I screwed everything up.
Yeah, something like this. I mean, from everything we've seen, I think Richie's a pretty good father,
Yeah.
actually. But I mean, they are divorced and so on, and it's clearly something he's continued to worry about. And I'm just kind of imagining filling in the gaps here about how his worries about being a good father and being able to do this, and the way that Mikey, um, whose opinion he cares about, has fed into this? How much does that like undermine Richie moving forward to where
Yeah.
he doesn't believe that he'll be able to succeed, and that kind of structure of I don't know, failing because you believe you're going to fail or something like that. And then, of course, retrospectively looking back and saying, well, of course I wasn't going to succeed at doing this because I'm not the person who can succeed at doing this, you know?
Yeah.
All of that makes sense to me in terms of his character.
It made me to also think about, earlier when they're at what's it called? The Coney King. I had to look that there. When they're at the Coney King waiting on the call, they talk about that they have a restaurant and that Mikey's sort of in charge and Mikey cooks from time to time. And they ask Richie, "What do you do?" And Mikey's like, "Yeah, what do you do?" And there's no real answer there. He's like, I'm the song and dance man, I'm the guy out front, I'm making the sales. It's just there's nothing there that Richie can actually point to say, well, because I do this, I provide value and make sure that this place is functioning at this level or serving at this level. He's just and it makes me wonder how many times is Mikey, the thing he does then, how many times has Mikey said those types of things to him, right?
Hmm.
If you're at the wrestaurant, what are you doing here? Why are you even here? What purpose do you serve here? Just how much has Richie heard that? And, you think about then is it Richie or Carmi take Mikey's death the hardest?
Yeah.
Based on this, I bet Richie took it really, really hard.
Yeah, good. And I mean, going back earlier in the episode, there's also this aspect of it where Mikey's doing something somewhat similar, even with regard to the trip that they're on. You know, it's like at the beginning of it, Richie feels like I'm being given an important task by Jimmy and all of
Yes.
that. This is cool.
Yes.
This is great. He's feeling good about it, you know. And how does Mikey respond? He goes, "Well, you're feeling respected. Just being an errand boy, right?
Yeah.
You're being sent to Gary, Indiana. You know, this sucks, really, right?" And it's like, oh, now
Still,
we have to
okay.
hang out in Gary. You still feel respected.
I,
So there's that
I
aspect too.
I had that exact same thought, but at the very end, when the guy opens the box, and it's like whatever he calls it, pump propellers, and Richie's almost looking at it like, oh, I thought this was going to be an important job, or I thought this was something that, was going to be more, I don't know, more glamorous or more adventurous or whatever, and it's just a guy getting a box of pump propellers because the FedEx is on strike. And
Yeah.
Richie's like, oh, even when I thought the thing was that I would be able to, do more to be more valuable to Jimmy or to Mikey, it just turned out I'm just a mule because the box couldn't get there.
Right. Yeah. It's not like the briefcase in Pulp Fiction or something like
Yeah.
that. It's not even. It also plays on. I recall particularly more at the beginning of the series when it premiered, feeling like maybe Jimmy was more mobbed up or something like that. And
Yeah.
as you go
Yes.
forward, it's
Yes.
like maybe there's some kind of shady connections, but for the most part, he's just a businessman. I think, right? Like even here, maybe those propellers are like to some degree black market, but it's not like they were um, muling a box of cocaine or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just like this is little widgets. Okay. So yeah, and I think that then you also have to speculate about what Richie was like before this.
Right.
But moving forward, if we want to interpret how Richie is at the beginning of season one, I think you do see there how he has a certain lack of confidence, lack of purpose, lack of self-respect in a particular way. And one of the
Yeah.
things that's been enjoyable over the course of the series is sort of seeing him find that through the restaurant, through the restaurant. I mean, right? Um, then we have the last scene, which I guess is cutting to the present. What do you make of this? This is, I mean, I guess we are to imagine that in that moment, Richie is reflecting back on this experience of Gary or whatever, and that would be the connection.
Yeah.
Um,
It struck me as that last few moments is not necessarily, I don't know. It didn't strike me as that is takes place after the events of Goodbye, the last episode that we've seen of the show. Maybe it was sort of the beef Richie, as he's recalling this. It's almost possible to see where this lands in the context of the show, but just that, yeah, he's kind of recalling this memory while he's blind staring at a traffic light. It looks like.
Yeah. I think that I mean, it's the only thing that makes sense to me is that they would be cutting to what is the present of the show.
Yeah.
Certainly, there are people out there on the internet asking, did the bear just kill off one of its main characters in a very special, unannounced? I don't think so. I don't think Richie's going to be dead, but it is a weird quirk that they did this episode that doesn't quite fit in without any announcement, and
Yeah.
then but there's
It'll be
another
interesting.
possibility maybe of why they decided to do that because maybe this was going to be episode one, and then they thought, well, that's kind of a weird season
Yeah.
premiere, but then we want to pick up with Richie being in the hospital or something. But hey, this episode's done. Let's just go ahead and release it. Maybe that's how it went. I don't know.
It would be an odd first episode. I mean, of course, this is the show that had the basically a montage episode as a first episode of a season once a couple years ago.
Yeah,
So who knows
it's like
what
a Nine Inch
what
Nails
they'll
music
do.
video. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I guess we're going to get the new season in June. No official date announced yet. We'll try to be on top of that.
Yeah.
Um, I know that you've got to run. We have a couple of things in our notes. I don't know if you want to hit real quick. I put eBug on here. I just want to mention the emergency goalie thing is a real thing. You can look into
Great
it, read
acronym.
what it
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Got to
It's
bring
an
that up.
interesting thing. It's an
Yeah.
interesting thing.
And then
Do you
yeah,
want?
just
Did you?
I wondered, okay, have we had an answer over 4 seasons of where the money in the tomato cans at the end of season one came from? And is this it? These sort of runs that they would do on behalf of Jimmy. Do we know where that money came from?
I don't feel like we do, and I mean it's a decent guess. Not as directly as just from this one trip, because as we were just talking about, it was just to sell
Yeah.
a box of I can't even remember what they're called now. The widgets, the plastic widgets of whatever kind. But maybe if he's doing various stuff like this and other side jobs, and
Yeah.
if he's taking all that money and keeping it off the books, I don't know. I feel like maybe there were some other things in season one, but
Yeah.
it's a weird one to me because it feels like the show has just totally dropped that question. So
Yeah.
I don't
It,
know.
it has. There was like
Yeah,
almost made it seem like he was like skimming things from vendors or not accounting for revenue, just some weird things that maybe you add this into the till there is what happens in this episode. So it's just a combination of things, I guess.
at one point I thought maybe it was like selling drugs or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think we've ever gotten a definitive answer. I don't know if it'll ever really matter if the show will explicitly revisit it, but you could take this as a jumping off point to speculate about that, sure, I suppose. Him
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
these sort of odd jobs or errands or whatever. Um, all right, good. I think that about covers it. Hopefully you enjoy listening and are with us as we continue to cover the bear. I think we'll probably try to do that with the next season. We'll have to see how the timing works out. We'll figure out a way probably. Um, Thanks always for listening. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Do like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out tvobsessive.com. And we'll be back on the podcast next week, continuing to talk about Widow's Bay, which we're covering on a regular basis. And we'll see you then.
All right. Looking forward to that. We'll see you next time.